Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, The Impact of AI in the Classroom, Experiences and Learnings, which is sponsored by Clarivate. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. I'll just put a couple links in the chat where you can register for upcoming webinars and watch previous webinar recordings. Also, if you're interested in library technology, LibTech Insights, or LTI is a content vertical from Choice that examines the day-to-day impact of library and education technology on academic librarians, faculty, and other higher education stakeholders. The channel provides practical guidance on technology trends and products as they relate to productivity, accessibility, content management, and more. You can find out more about LTI and sign up for the newsletter via the links in the chat. Okay, so before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of the webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to ask questions of our speakers or share any comments. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. You can also use the upvote feature to highlight questions you like or would like to be addressed. Also, there is closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom panel of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archived version and where to access today's slides. And with that, we're ready to get started, so I will hand it over to Mark.
Great. Thanks so much, Sabrina. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Wherever you're at, hopefully it's as sunny as Mark Ailing's Cambridge. It is not that way in Detroit, but it's winter, so we're okay with that. So we're going to explore some key learnings and insights about student use of AI-assisted or fully AI-based research tools through the lens of both the library and an AI feature creator like ProQuest. Next slide. So joining us on the call today, myself, Mark Cormier. I'm a product lead at ProQuest. So I manage a number of products on the aggregation side of our business, as well as our research assistant program. I'm joined by Haley Lott, research and student engagement librarian at Roger Williams University. So Haley can say hi in just a couple minutes as well. I'm joined also by Stephen Kemsley, a colleague at ProQuest, who is our senior manager of UX design at ProQuest. He's going to talk about some of the research findings that we have been gaining through testing our online research assistant that's embedded in ProQuest products today. So let me just walk through our agenda very briefly. So we're going to start by talking about and sharing some very high-level understanding of what we know about student behaviors related to AI tools. But we're going to spend the majority of our time hearing from Haley's experience with students over the course of her current and previous positions as a librarian and associate professor. Then we'll hear from Stephen about some of the research we've been doing with students and librarians in support of the ProQuest Research Assistant. We will open up for questions as well. There's a Q&A feature, as Sabrina mentioned, so we're happy to answer any questions that you have during our session. Those that we can't answer, we'll be sure to get back directly to you offline to answer those questions. So to kick things off, we know late November was an inflection point for many of us in the higher ed space, especially students with the advent of ChatGPT. We've only had a couple of years of use to assess its impact on research and learning, but we're still coming to bear with what we know and how that might change in the near and the short term. We do have a lot of statistics that provide snapshots in time, and in this case, it's important to consider the impact on high school students so we can see what experiences they bring to their universities as freshmen. First stat I find fascinating as well, according to statistics gathered by Turnitin, some students rely heavily on generative AI to complete assignments, but it's not prevalent. It's not abusive at this point. There seems to be a relatively higher degree of regulation of generative AI use in high school, but studies in the higher ed space do point to much higher levels of use of AI tools by undergrads. According to a survey run by EDUCAUSE, faculty respondents believe that academic dishonesty will increase and that students will trust AI tools way too much. 60% of respondees believe that. They were split, though, about whether AI outputs will become more or less biased. The overall results did point to optimism about the potential for AI to positively influence the future of higher education, while recognizing that there are areas of concern around bias, hallucinations, etc. Recent Forbes Technology Council research shows that 60% of teachers right now are using AI regularly in their classrooms. So prior to the emergence of Gen AI, students were using AI-enhanced learning management systems, language learning tools, but this democratization of AI through ChatGPT has forced an entire generation of students to adapt to a very consequential technology without a lot of guidance or instruction. So it really begs the question, will higher ed be ready to welcome future freshman classes with the advanced proficiency in GI use that students are bringing today? So what do we know about student use? Well, we know that according to the Digital Education Council, the vast majority of students in 16 countries that they surveyed were using tools at least weekly. Faculty opinion over Gen AI occupies a broad spectrum, with many believing that the technology is either going to decimate or evolve and enhance our understanding and development of critical thinking skills. The middle ground, though, is occupied really by our ability to usher in and support the use of these tools to drive efficiency, but not at the cost of building research skills and higher order thinking. So what does this all mean? Well, finding consensus on the value of these tools is difficult. There's so many tools today, and this lack of testing standards make assessing them difficult. Time is also a huge obstacle. You'll hear from that about that with Haley as well, to determining the fit, the transparency, and the appropriateness of these tool use by students. Student use has only been gated by the problems these tools are designed to solve for. So whether faculty would find them suitable for their students or not is beside the point. They continue to adopt new tools as those platforms are born or as they add new tools to those platforms. There were recent findings from an Ithaca National Survey on how faculty are using generative AI in the classroom, and it found that the majority of instructors have at least some knowledge and experience with Gen AI tools themselves. But especially in the case of older instructors, they may not have the confidence in their own technical skills or have the confidence in AI technology as an instructional toolkit to begin with. A lot of that perception is driven by lack of awareness of use cases and methodologies for integrating them within a course. And so what we hear from faculty in terms of what they want from Gen AI or for Gen AI is that they don't want it to do the work for students. We hear that from faculty, but we also hear it to an even greater degree from our library customers. Faculty are in the business of teaching research skills and enhancing them, so they don't want students to find shortcuts in the way of building those skills. They're also looking for guardrails to avoid academic dishonesty up front, but then also understand how the tools are built, especially what the output is and the influence of training data in generative AI, and in terms of biases that are inherent in the data and any type of misinformation that are communicated. They're also especially looking for institutional guidance in how to integrate tools that are adopted or use cases to use them and embed those within the tools in the courses that they're teaching. So at that point, I'd like to turn it over to Haley Lott, who's going to talk a little bit about her experiences as an instructor using generative AI tools as a librarian and advising students how to use them. So Haley, I'll kick it over to you.
Yes, hi there. So I am the Research and Student Engagement Librarian and an assistant professor at Roger Williams in Bristol, Rhode Island. So this is what it looks like when it's a beautiful day outside. My position is tenure track, so we're crossing our fingers for that promotion sometime in the future. But I did start here in fall of 2023, so I've been here for a little less than 2 years. Roger Williams is classified as a master's college and university, and it's home to the only law school in Rhode Island. So we are largely residential. We have just under 4,000 undergraduates between our main campus and then our extension school located in Providence, and approximately 800 graduate law and professional students. So for the context of today's conversation, I do want to share that we do not have an official AI policy at our school. So we allow for each professor, sometimes each discipline, to craft their own classroom policies based on what is best for that particular discipline. So prior to coming to Roger, I was working in a merged library and IT department at a small private liberal arts school in Wisconsin. And I reported directly to the CIO. So because of this, I had a lot of time to have conversations with our IT professionals about what generative AI was going to do on our campuses to our work long before ChatGPT was released to public in late 2022. So I've been talking about AI for a really long time, and I've had a lot of time to plan for that. When I came to my current institution, though, I joined the faculty. So I was in a different community. I was having different conversations. We were at very different stages of AI conversation, implementation, comfort. And I really want to address that because we are coming from different places of knowledge, preparedness, comfort in working with and implementing AI at our institution. And that context is really going to inform our next steps. So one size is not going to fit all when we're talking about generative AI and our plans for our campus. So today, I really want to just quickly go through some of the student and faculty perceptions that I've encountered in my work, talk about some best practices in the library to provide guidance and drive the successful use of AI tools. And then I'm going to share just a few stories and strategies that I've used in my classroom to drive student engagement without sacrificing that critical thinking piece. And I'm timing myself, and I hope we're going to do that in about 18 minutes. So I'm going to be moving kind of fast, but if you have questions for me, just drop them in the Q&A and I'll get to those afterwards. So my students have very different opinions on AI. They're very strong and they're all over the board. So I have a lot of students coming from creative writing majors, majors that involve creativity piece, and they are really worried about AI taking jobs, AI degrading creativity. I have other students that are hesitant about AI, but interested, saying that, they're not really sure when it's okay to use and when it's not, so they err on not using it. And I have other students that say that they use it all the time for non-academic purposes. So things like putting together grocery lists, working out for leg day, like what's that going to look like? And I am, of course, sure that students are also using AI to sometimes complete coursework, but nobody's admitting to that, right? So very different opinions across the board, but everyone is agreeing that AI and the use of AI is going to have an implication on their future careers. So they need to learn how to use it. They need to learn how to interact. And when I'm teaching in my classes, I'm noticing varying levels of AI literacy. So we have some work to do to get our students prepared for their futures. Our faculty, on the other hand, are having a little more specific concerns. So rising academic integrity violations, AI doing the work for students, causing degradation of those critical thinking skills. We do have a lot of faculty that are interested in what AI can potentially do to help them work more efficiently, to help students learn better, but they don't necessarily have time to become experts. And they don't necessarily want to teach something to their students if they're not comfortable using it themselves, which is a valid concern. They're also indicating the need for clearer policies. So remember, our campus doesn't provide policies because it allows for flexibility between disciplines, but that can also be hard for people that want some of that structure. So that brings us to what we can do. And I'm interested in hearing from you what some of the challenges that you face in guiding students and faculty on AI use is. And if you want to throw that in the Q&A, that'd be awesome. So our faculty and student adoption of AI is really uneven, it's varied, and that really makes us the key facilitators of AI literacy on our campus. So, what does that mean? We are the hubs for responsible AI use. We're looked to as trusted technology experts, whether that's true or not. Um, in our communities, we have this innate ability to take really complicated topics, break them down into bite sized pieces, and then relay them in a non technical way, which can really provide that comfort for people that we're talking to. So, what does that look like in our role in this conversation on campus? So, we need to be able to have that working knowledge of what AI is, how that works, what tools are available. And that comes with our own professional development. So, we need the support for professional development from our institutions, from our supervisors. We need to be advocating for things like protecting privacy, making sure it's not causing environmental harm. All of these things are important, and we can be advocates of those. We also need to be making sure that we're creating equal access to these tools used on campus. I come from a very stratified institution, and so we have students that are paying for AI, and we have students that can't pay for AI. And how does that impact the work they're able to turn in? We need to be sharing trustworthy information on the pros and the cons. And we need to be building these into our one-shot information literacy courses, thinking about critical thinking, creativity, ethics. How do we implement that in an already short amount of time? And then lastly, we need to be able to train the trainers. We need to be able to train faculty and staff on how to use these tools in their classes. So some things that might lead to are creating library guides, video tutorials on AI tools and best practices, hosting AI literacy workshops, teaching prompt engineering as a research skill, because that research question that is already prompt engineering, we just need to reframe that a little bit to apply in the library databases and AI tools. We can partner with faculty to design AI enhanced assignments. So if they may not know how to apply that in their own classes, we can go in there and make suggestions about maybe you can incorporate this here and evaluate it like this. And then we need to be promoting ways to use AI tools that enhance but not replace learning. So I want to share just a few stories from my own classroom that may or may not kind of aid our conversation today in talking about AI on our campuses. So I do want to know if you've seen an example of AI being used in a way that enhances rather than replaces critical thinking. So share that in the Q&A. But here are a few things that I am doing. So before I talk about AI, and I talk about AI in a majority of my classes, whether they're embedded, whether it's one shot, I try to build that in. Before I do that, I think it's really important that we get up on the balcony and we have some larger conversations about the purpose of what we're doing. So, like starting with why. Why are we having students do that? What is the importance of this assignment? Our students are not coming to college putting themselves through the time, the stress, the expense for no reason, right? They want something out of this, and we want that to be like a high impact learning situation. So we need to explain what that is, why what we're doing connects to that, and how it helps them accomplish their goals. So in my class, I do that in a couple of different ways. So I always start with Coolthow's research on the information search process. And we talk about the waves of emotion that you experience while doing research, while completing your assignments. We talk about how everybody goes through kind of those waves as they do their work, and that's okay. That's normal. There are resources available to help them through that process. So the library, the tutoring center, the writing center, counseling services, et cetera, et cetera. We exist solely to help our students succeed. And we want our students to come see us when they're doing well and when they're struggling, because we really do care about their success. We want to hear from them. So then we kind of switch that conversation to their identity as scholars. So we talk about voice and language and their unique perspective. And we talk about how desperately our academic world needs their views in these conversations. So they need to be a part of this academic community. They're actively contributing to the scholarly conversation. And their reputation as scholars is impacted by the sources that they use, the work they submit, the effort they're putting in. And we can tell all of that throughout their assignment as we're grading, right? So we want to make sure that our students care about the work they're submitting. And sometimes they're going to be in a general course, a gen ed course, and they might not see the connection between that first year writing class and their senior thesis that they're taking in accounting. But we need to make sure that they can connect those things. So how can we talk about taking assignments and manipulating them so that they can really talk about the things that they care about? So we really show that we've made successful progress if a student can take a source that they kind of identified and used in their first semester, first year, and reuse it in their thesis in a new way, because that's showing how they're critically thinking about information in different contexts along the learning process. So we talk about that, and we talk about what strategies they can use to apply these sources they're getting in gen ed classes to their senior year thesis. And all of this is done before we get into the, okay, how do we do this thing called research? What is the next step here? So anecdotally, I give our students exit tickets, and it always asks the question, what part of this session made you feel most supported as a scholar? And I have had a lot of rich conversations about students saying that they've never heard these things before. They didn't know they were entering into the scholarly community. They were thinking that this was more of a place with training wheels, and that's not what we're doing here. So explaining that why is very important. The next kind of piece is using AI in a low stakes way. So I had a situation where I was mentoring a student who was really struggling with their major. So they had just had a chronic illness diagnosis. They were not doing so hot grade-wise, and they really wanted to change their major, but they wanted that career that came out at the end of it, and they weren't sure what else they were interested in. So we pulled up AI, we pulled up a tool and looked at how different classes and majors could actually lead back to their original career field, even though it wasn't as black and white written out on paper as this leads to this job. We talked through all of these different paths, and they kind of came out with, okay, here's what I could do. And then they said that it didn't really matter, because before they could change their major, they needed to have a difficult conversation with their family. So they didn't want to disappoint their family. And so instead of moving into a program where they would be more successful, they were just going to kind of slog through, keep going as they were. So we talked a little bit about that and how to have difficult conversations. And then I brought up character.ai and programmed an AI to respond as if it were their mom. And we modeled that conversation so that that student could then go forward and have that conversation in person and feel like they were prepared and confident. So that actually has turned into an assignment that I use, where I ask students to research a conspiracy theory, use a project management approach to debunk that, and then engage with a conspiracy theorist to model healthy boundary setting during conversations where somebody that you're talking with is just not going to be swayed. And that's part of what we are trying to do in today's political climate, is try to show where you can set boundaries and still maintain your own kind of personal ethos. So the last piece here, I'll try to go through pretty quickly, but we need to help faculty shift perspective on AI. So I've worked with a lot of faculty resistant to AI, and I've had so many examples where I come to a class, I say, I'd like to talk about this tool, and the faculty member says, no, 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 we don't use AI in my class. I don't want students to have that temptation. And I always say, can I come to your office first? Can I show you how this works and how this is going to help you do what you're doing in a better way? And so I've had a little time to build trust. They're going to give me a little latitude, and I'll demonstrate how a tool works. And then I'll hear them say, wait, go back. Like, I need to write this down. I'm going to use this in my research. So those faculty are now sending students and other faculty to me to show how they can implement these tools, how they can investigate new tools. And so I've recently been showing a faculty member who's very resistant to AI how to generate 2 to 3 sentence summaries of a source's relevance on their topic, and then adding that summary to their citation management tool. So in 3 months, when they finally get to their sabbatical and they are ready to write that paper, they know exactly why they downloaded that source in the first place. They know what they were thinking when they found it. And these kind of strategies to show faculty how it's going to help them in their research has really given them a little bit more confidence to help me and let me show students how to use it in their research. So here is where I want to talk a little bit about reframing the conversation. So we hear a lot of conversations about AI where it says, don't use this. Don't use it for X. Don't use it for Y. This is going to make you cheat. It's going to diminish critical thinking skills. These conversations, I see the fear that is coming from them, but it also kind of creates a situation where we are like, causing shame and inequity in the use of these tools. And so we don't want to shame our students into thinking that AI is bad, and if they use it, they will be bad students. We really just need to reframe that in here is how we can use it responsibly. So the villainization of a tool really serves none of us. We do need to reframe these conversations on our campus, saying things more like, here's how this can help streamline your process. Here's where you cite it. And then if you're struggling with the actual writing portion, here is the center on campus that can help you get through those steps. So we can really get a lot closer to our desired outcome with that positive approach. I often feel like we get disappointed when students don't use our support services, or they think about their classes one at a time instead of part as a whole. But how are we actually talking to them about this? Are we explicitly sharing our expectations? When we talk about these things in my class, I see the light bulbs turn on. I see students get re-energized about learning. And if we can really have these more explicit conversations and treat our students like they're already respected as scholars, they're going to live up to that expectation, usually. So this is kind of my final thought before I pass it on to Stephen. But I have concerns about AI. I'm a librarian. It would be naive of me not to think about privacy, access, quality of information. But there are good things that can come out of this. So as we advocate for big tech companies to do better at, protecting the environment, protecting our privacy, we can also be implementing smart strategies to incorporate this into our day-to-day work and help relieve some of the pressure that is on us as professionals, perhaps in understaffed departments. So there are a lot of uses of this, and I just really want to be part of this conversation. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Stephen.
Thanks, Haley. Yeah, that was great. And I was so engaged as a listener, it's going to be hard for me to transition to presenter, but here we go. I'm a senior manager of user experience, and I'm happy to be here today to talk about mainly the ProQuest Research Assistant, our approach to it, and then some of the feedback we've gotten during our beta process. Let's see. Okay. So just a quick background for those of you not familiar with the ProQuest Research Assistant. Here's a quick overview. So our main goal was really to harness AI in a way that was responsible and a reliable way to assist students and researchers with common tasks and pain points. So we really wanted to take the approach of not the all-in-one place that does all your research for you, but really to just assist researchers with common tasks that we knew that they have already. So things like crafting more effective searches, analyzing long documents, evaluation of whether a document that you're looking at is going to be useful for them. So we didn't want to create a tool like ChatGPT deliberately, and it's not just a chatbot that gives you everything that your hopes and dreams. I mean, there's tools out there that do that, but we wanted to really take the approach of a true assistant to the research process that doesn't replace it. A bit about our research process over the past year or two. We've done extensive outreach to students, educators of all types, librarians, instructors, and we conduct ongoing research because this is such a fast evolving area, both in academia and AI as a whole. We need to make sure that we understand changing attitudes, the way people are using AI currently, what the concerns are, and what hopes people have for the way it should be used. So we've done exploratory research to kind of help answer, what don't we know that we don't know? So very broad conversations with the academic community. We've done targeted interviews and surveys focused on specific questions and features. We've done a lot of usability testing and activities to make sure that the designs that we're producing are understandable and intuitive to the best of our ability. And then we have multiple advisory boards that we check in on a regular basis to make sure that we're going in the right direction. So this is all an iterative process, and we're far from finished. We don't think that we've arrived at the perfect endpoint, but this is we're proud of what we've done so far, and we see it as a starting point rather than an endpoint. So we really took a problem-solving approach with AI instead of like I said, just a chatbot, kind of what you might think of as a kind of easy Me Too approach. We decided to think about, okay, what problems do we already know exist? I mean, I've been at Clarivate for 10 years. I've been talking to users for that amount of time. And I'm sure all of you can understand from your conversations with students and researchers that these are on the screen right now are common challenges. And I don't think these challenges are dramatically different post-AI than they were pre-AI. So we decided to address what we know are current challenges and see if what we can do with AI can help assist the student or researcher with some of these activities, like creating better queries or understanding a document, choosing a research topic, things like that. And then in terms of our initial approach with the research assistant, we really focused on the document and having assistance at that level. A lot of our users come in on a ProQuest document. ProQuest isn't necessarily their home base. It's usually like the library search or Google Scholar, places like that. So we reach the most people by focusing on that experience. And we know that reading and understanding the document and using it is one of the key challenges. So that was a main area of focus for us. And then also we have some features along with the search workflow, helping people really with those keyword searches where we've seen a lot of people struggle. Even advanced users can type in keyword searchers and get hundreds of thousands of results. Sometimes it can be very overwhelming. So helping a little bit in terms of narrowing their search and focusing on areas that they might not be familiar with by offering some keywords. So I'll get right into the feedback, and you'll see a lot of quotes that I've included, mainly from our librarian and educator perspective. I've noted when it's different than that. These are responses from conversations or qualitative exercises like surveys or long form qualitative data, which I think really reveals a lot of the concerns and the hopes and the feedback that we've gotten. So in general, what we've heard that people like about our solution is that it's time saving, it's helpful for guiding researchers, it doesn't do the work for them. It's relatively thoughtful implementation of AI, and it's more credible than some because of our emphasis on having the basis of all our features on the full text of the document. And that's something that we made a point to do, is along with every AI feature, we basically use the entire text of the document and use the LLM more as the language for its language capabilities rather than relying on its training data to produce the answer. We focus the AI and using the full text for the answer. So things that we can improve. There was a desire throughout the beta and even before just to see the references to the original text with any AI answer. I'll speak more about that a little bit later. There is a desire to see it available for all ProQuest content, and I think that's our desire too. There's certain restrictions that we have with publisher rights and with cost and things like that, but that was another thing that was expressed. And then more interactivity was desired too. So part of the promise of AI is that can kind of be customized to each person and kind of provide unique help. And the features that we have are tailored towards specific kind of problems and use cases, but not towards individuals. So we are aiming to go, that was another piece of feedback, is that we should be a little more customized with that. And then some of the suggested search terms were inconsistent, and I'll talk more about that later. But throughout the process, we always ask our question, is our tool living up to our guiding principles? And these are principles that were derived from research we did before we even developed anything. So we've heard from our customers that any AI tool that they want to recommend or that someone use should be all four of these things. It should be credible. So it should have a very high degree of accuracy, minimizing hallucinations. It should be inclusive. So it should include diverse content and reduce bias to the extent possible, and also be accessible for all users, regardless of ability. Should be transparent. So we should be very clear about how user data is used, how models are trained, and have, err on the side of providing too much information, essentially. So librarians can feel confident that when they're recommending a tool, they know the limitations at play. And just to be transparent with you now, we don't use user or publisher content to train models or any of our features. And then the last point here is educational. So it's something that comes up in almost every conversation, is that, and Haley mentioned this, Mark mentioned this, it's AI should assist and not replace student thinking. And I think the quote on the bottom right here really underlines that AI is here to stay. They want things made easier for them, but individual struggle is an important part of learning, which is definitely a belief that we have as well. So getting into some of the specific features, key takeaways is something that we show on by default on most documents. And we saw it as an evaluation tool for time-strapped researchers. So is there something I can quickly look at that will tell me if this is relevant enough to spend my time reading? And sometimes there's abstracts, sometimes the abstracts are quite long, sometimes there's no abstract. And this can help the user quickly evaluate something. This was generally seen as very useful, and the most useful feature in some cases. Although some wanted more detail into the topics. There's some user comments here along the right here. A lot of users want it to be longer, and some of our customers say it's too long. So it's always a little bit of a balance that we're walking here. But some upcoming improvements that we're working on, and this is not reflected in the screenshot. The screenshot is the existing feature, but some upcoming improvements include a more focused response, a clear structure with more headings, customized overviews for different content types like primary works and select disciplines that have different concerns that you might want to highlight differently, and a revised third paragraph, which didn't get great reviews. So we're refocusing that on just a straightforward statement about the relationship of the document to the user's search term, if there was a search term. The next feature I'm going to talk about is important concepts. This is an on-demand feature that basically pulls out 10 different concepts from the document. In general, this probably was the highest rated feature that we had. They thought it was just very useful, since understanding concepts of an article is kind of the first step in terms of, processing that and integrating it into your own work. Although some of the concepts that were getting pulled out by our AI system were not really concepts. So sometimes it would pull out the authors and organizations, things that weren't the topics of the paper. So we've already revised, based on that feedback, we've revised this feature to have it more focused on the topics of the document. And then we are continuing to revise to make this more like in primary works. We're focusing more on the themes of the document, and we're trying to kind of delve more into what's needed for each specific discipline and content type, rather than like a one-size-all approach. Search term suggestions was another area where we kind of saw mixed feedback here. People really love the concept of this, so we basically prevent suggested keywords. Users can click on that, it adds it to their search and lets people quickly narrow down. Sometimes these were great suggestions and people like them, and sometimes, depending on where they were in a particular database or a particular topic, they were inconsistent. So we're working on increasing the accuracy and relevance of those terms, providing definitions of the terms, because we've heard that this can be not just a way to narrow down your search, but to learn about terms you might not know have existed. So you can kind of learn and build your vocabulary as you're searching. But we're excited about some of those changes coming. And then I'm going to wrap up in a couple slides because I want to leave enough time for Q&A here, but I wanted to talk a bit about our roadmap. And one of the features I'm really excited about that touches on some of the feedback that we heard is providing answers with references. Now, we're launching this soon for a particular prompt that talks about what are the findings and conclusions of a paper. So usually, like for very long scholarly articles, this can be one of the user's main tasks here. And what we do is we're going to provide a little longer response than the key takeaway, but for every AI claim within the AI generated statement, we provide one or multiple references to the original text, and then an easy way for users to look at the quote that helped to create that AI statement, and then you jump to that point in the document easily. And we think this is good for a number of reasons, because we want to orient users eventually to reference the original text. And we also want to provide a quick way for users to double check, is this AI credible? And we hope that it is. We try to make as credible as possible, but this way users can hopefully be trained to click on those references and make sure that the tool we're using is accurate, and we can build trust that way with our users. Some other things on our roadmap, I already talked about the findings and conclusions feature with references. We're improving our suggested documents as well. This is a popular feature that existed already before AI, and we're trying to make those recommendations even more relevant and helpful. Visualizations is another thing that we're working on, where we're trying to show the document in a non-textual way. Lots of users we talk to are they describe themselves as visual learners. Lots of people describe themselves that way, and seeing something in a visual way can really help comprehension in a way that a big block of text can't. So we're hard at work on that. And then last is our document chat feature, which is kind of the feature that some of the other academic AI tools went out with early on, and we have been took a different approach because this is a feature that we think requires a lot of testing to get right, because users can type anything in that box, and we need to respond in a way that's credible, inclusive, transparent, educational. So we're working on that and hope to have that later this year. And that wraps up my section, and I think we'll open it up for Q&A.
Okay, so we will take questions, any questions that you have. There's many that are coming through the chat. Haley, there was definitely interest in getting some more feedback from you around best practices and your thoughts around student use of AI. If you do have questions, please do put them in the Q&A. First one that I wanted to call out, Haley, the stages of your AI graphic, stages of AI, was very well received. Folks want to get permission to use that, so we can talk about that offline. But you'll have the slides afterwards, everyone on the call, so that will be available to you. There is a poll that just came up on your screen about taking a look at the research assistant, so you can let us know if that is something that is of interest to you. Haley, for you specifically from the chats, maybe you can help answer this question. How do you convince library colleagues that librarians need to be proactive on helping kind of usher in student use of AI tools?
It's a great question, and when you figure it out, you can let me know. I think it goes back to that one-size-fits-all approach is not going to necessarily be helpful in those conversations. We've got a lot of faculty in our library that have done really great work around information literacy, and there's concern about what adding this new element in could look like or how that could impact their program and their routine. I think a strategy that's been somewhat successful for me in my own library has been to kind of talk about AI openly and honestly with colleagues, how I'm using it in my classes, where I'm seeing the benefits, where I'm seeing the drawbacks. And I've had some success in some of my colleagues then approaching me with tools to help them complete their work. So they're interested in using it in library operation, but maybe not in information literacy sessions yet. And I think that progress is a good step. But I also I used to do safe space training, and there was always that, why isn't so-and-so coming? They really need this. And I'd always hear that you can't bring everyone to the party. Like, you can't make people come and embrace something that even just because you want to, even because they should, they may not. And so what do you do with that? And so a lot of times, that to me looks like continuing to include them in conversations. Don't discount someone just because they're tech averse or they have concerns. We need to have conversations about this, and there are some things to be concerned about. So we can have those conversations. And I think when we are open in that way and honest with each other, it may come to a point where we can move forward and talk about the implementation of these tools in our workspaces. And, always tying things to institutional outcomes, like career building is a priority for every institution. How can we use this tool to meet that outcome, to satisfy these requirements that we're being evaluated on? Sometimes it's just a matter of looking at that in that like black and white way. But I think there are no right or wrong strategies there. And I'd be interested in learning more about how other people are doing that, because I'm not doing it as successfully as I would like to say that I am.
Very good. Thank you. Another question, Haley, specifically about one-shots. How do you incorporate talking about AI in your information literacy one-shots? We have to cover so much during a one-shot that we can't get to everything students need to know.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one thing I will say is so my exit tickets, I just started implementing those this year. It always starts with what's a goal you have for this session, and I have them do that beforehand. And then I ask them if they've met the goal, how they're feeling supported as a scholar, and then one other like information literacy based, like what's the difference between a primary and a secondary source. So on those things, I always tell students that if they have questions or they want follow-up or they want me to check in on their assignment and see how it's going, they can leave me their email on the back and I am happy to follow up. So I've actually had more students follow me across campus to my office to follow up on something from an information session than I've ever had before. And I am dedicating like 10 minutes at the beginning of these 50-minute sessions to talking about why we're having them do this in the first place. And that's valuable time. I don't always get to hear all of the databases that can help you. I sometimes lead with databases all work in the same way. Here are some strategies. Come find me if you need help, because that sometimes gets pushed out for this conversation. But the benefit that I've seen has actually encouraged me to keep that section in. But sometimes I throw that in as I'm having students do other pieces of that assignment. So write your research question. And while you do that, I'm going to be up here writing a research question using AI, and we'll see who gets there with the best kind of piece first. Or we'll do some sort of competition, like half the class does this, half the class does this, and then we debate the pros and cons of each strategy. I do lead with you need to learn how to do this on paper first, like show your math homework, and then we'll introduce you to the calculator. So I think there are a lot of different approaches. And again, we're only kind of using this in the last maybe year and a half in our classes in a meaningful way. So this is an ever evolving kind of conversation.
Haley, related to that question just came in. Can you please share an example of your exit ticket questions?
Yes, actually, I have.
Sounds like a great way to connect to students. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a database of 60 or 70 questions, and I give students 3 questions at the end from that list. So I give each class different questions so that I can get an overview of learning at different points in different classes. And so if you're interested in that, I can share my email and give you a list of all of my questions. Or I can just kind of give you a few, but I actually just wrote one like 5 minutes before I started. And it was about, I'm teaching RefWorks later today. So the question I'm asking is, what strategies can you use to revisit and incorporate sources from past research into this project? And I'm hoping that by asking those like qualitative questions, we can really have these conversations. But I've never seen, I give them handwritten, which is a pain for me. But students are so much more thoughtful when they're not looking at a computer screen and typing in. I can be sure that they're turning in a handwritten evaluation. I don't know if they're doing a survey online. So I give them handwritten, I mix up the questions, and we talk about how they're feeling supported, how their perception of the library has changed over the last 50 minutes. And so I'm happy to share those questions if you contact me.
Great. Thanks, Haley. We have a ton of questions about environmental impact, and I think there's been a few links, environmental impact of AI use. There's a few links that have been generously added to the chat. Thanks, everyone, for responding with some information about that. There are questions about the ProQuest Research Assistant. If it's live today, it is. It is in many of our products today. So we're also working on ways to make it somewhat customizable in terms of which features you see. So those are also in the works. We can answer those questions offline. I did want to perhaps close with a question I think is on a lot of folks' minds right now in the chat. and it's best expressed this way. What for Haley? What is the best way to get quickly spun up on AI as a librarian?
Play. Like, design an assignment and go on a tool and just play with it. So I oftentimes I edit papers for students if they come in, and I'll take their assignment and I'll try to do it myself. I'll try to see what and I'll go in and play with different tools and say, today I'm exploring ChatGPT, but I want to do it from a student that's not paying for subscriptions perspective. Or today I'm exploring ChatGPT, but what if I paid for this instead of? So I'm looking at the differences in responses, and I I think that you're going to get very different responses if you are going in and approaching it as a student, saying, generate a 3-page paper about the environmental impact of AI, which would be kind of ironic, maybe. But I think you're going to get different results if you do that versus if you write a 3-page stream of consciousness about your thoughts on the environmental impact of AI, uploading it, and then saying, pick out the critical points here, use this language, and come up with a 3-word or a 3-page summary of this topic. So try different things in your prompt engineering. But I think also we should be building communities of practice. There are people here in this session today that we could communicate with each other about things that we're trying. We could explore a different tool every month, or we could explore a different assignment in different ways and share best practices. And so I think some of that connection piece between colleagues, maybe not at your own institution, but at your sister schools or schools in your state, or maybe if you just want to hang out with me, I'm happy to do that. Would actually love to do that. So I think there are ways that we can do this, but I think we just need to get on a tool, play around with it.
Agreed. Kick the tires. Yep. Haley, thanks so much. There's a lot of requests for more information from you specifically in the chat, and we can go through and answer some of those questions offline separately. I don't think we'll have a chance to do that for everyone today. There was a question about the ProQuest Research Assistant. Is it free to subscribers today? Yes, it is. This comes as no cost to you. We are exploring features that are probably more computationally heavy, that are going to take a lot of heavy lifting on the back end. Whether or not those become subscriber-based, we don't know. We're looking at a lot of different use cases and trying to support the use and the implementation of these in a way that doesn't do the work for students, certainly, but can really support more high intensity use cases, perhaps, at the graduate and PhD level for literature reviews and really computationally heavy tasks. So, and that might be on the Web of Science, for instance. So we don't know about the future. We're hoping to work on some of those more computationally heavy tools. But right now, the Research Assistant is free to subscribers across a broad variety of our products, which we can let you know about as well in the chat. Let's see, lots of other questions. There was one, can you share your rationale for how the tool assists rather than replaces students' critical thinking engagement with the research process? Yeah, I can start off, Stephen, if you want to add in anything along the way. The way that we've built out the tools, first of all, because they're aligned to a single document, the way that our tool works is it is assessing and interrogating a single document. There is no training data that's involved. So actually the text that is generated to derive key takeaways and research topics and to extract entities or key concepts from that paper, it's actually generated and derived from the paper itself. The key takeaway is not a summarization. It's not meant to be lifted, and it's typically not the length of which that you would see students lift. It's a very high level description of the document itself to help the student understand whether or not this is going to be relevant to them. It also talks about key concepts that are talked about in the document to help them, again, understand situationally whether or not this is going to be relevant. So it's meant to really drive engagement with the text and identify upfront its value and relevance. And then finally, the other piece of the key takeaway is it talks about how it's relevant to their search terms that they used. So there's a lot of interplay between the document itself and the research assistant that's really helping uncover key aspects of the document to help the student understand its value to them and their research task. Stephen, anything you wanted to expand upon that? I know we've got just a minute left.
Yeah, I mean, just briefly, I think we see ourselves as a tool that's a step in the research process, and we're not trying to do everything for the user, nor can we, or nor should we. But like one of the features we have is a feature that lets users brainstorm, the AI brainstorm 5 research topics based on the text, which is something that often they're in the midst of doing when they're just browsing around and they're not sure exactly what they want to write about. So that will give them a starting point of maybe some explorations and a way to maybe find some documents related to that. But there's lots of steps after that that need to take place that require other tools and librarians and interactions with instructors. So
Yeah,
yeah,
great.
we're right at the
Thank you
time.
so much. Yes, I know that we're at time. So to honor everyone's time with us today, we wanted to thank you. We do have some questions in the chat that we will answer independently. So thank you so much for your time today. And back over to you, Sabrina.
Great. Thanks so much to Mark, Haley, and Stephen for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to our attendees for your great questions and your comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording and where to access today's slides. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. It should be up in your browser. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the webinar and hope to see you again soon on another session.
Thank you.
Thanks.